Yeah. Hair flip, yeah, I'm a badass bitch. I don't like it. Hair flip, yeah. Oh my god. So you guys should be happy. Oh my goodness. Hair flip. But anyways, hair flip. Hair flipping on these toes. Hi.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to your boy Sean Davey Way. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe, tap that bell if you would like to be notified of all of our future content. Today, we will be discussing DL Hughley, who recently came under fire from actress-comedian Monique. Now, allegedly, DL Hughley had Monique sign a contract so that they can go on tour together. In this contract, Monique states that she was supposed to be the headliner of the tour. But when it comes to DL Hughley, he had another thing coming for dear old Monique. There's a lot of sordid things about DL's past, so we're going to get into those things and also where he's from, a little backstory before we drift into all of this heat that is going on between Monique and DL Hughley. So, without holding you any further, let's get right into surviving DL Hughley. DL Hughley was born Daryl Lynn Hughley, born March 6, 1963. His age is 59. Hughley was born in Portsmouth, VA, the son of Audrey and Charles Hughley, who was a Delta Airlines maintenance worker. He is the second of 4 children. He stayed in Portsmouth for only 2 months before the family moved. Hughley grew up in South Central Los Angeles. Hughley's teen years were troubled as he became a member of the notorious street gang, the Bloods, and was expelled from San Pedro High School. However, he eventually turned his back on the gang life and got his GED and obtained employment with the Los Angeles Times. From 1992 to 1993, Hughley was the original host of Comic View, the stand-up comedy program on BET. In 1993, he also appeared in the 3rd season of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as Will's friend, Keith Campbell, a comedian from Philadelphia. From 1998 to 2002, he wrote, produced, and starred in the television sitcom series The Hughleys, based on his real-life experiences living with his African-American family in an upscale neighborhood. During 2005, he released a stand-up comedy album, DL Hughley Notes from the GED Section, and had a short-lived talk show on Comedy Central called Weekends at DL. He is the member of the original Kings of Comedy and has also had roles on Studio 60 on Sunset Strip and on NBC's Scrubs as Turk's brother. In 2008, he was the host of the BET Awards. He also attended the funeral of one of his best friends and fellow King of Comedy, Bernie Mac, where he gave a tearful speech during the eulogy. Hughley also has a career as an on-air radio personality. On July 20th, 2009, the DL Hughley Morning Show premiered on WRKS, now WEPN, more popularly known at the time as 98.7 KISS FM, an urban adult contemporary station in New York City. His co-hosts included former BET News correspondent Jackie Reed. Airing from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., the show placed Hughley in direct competition with his fellow King of Comedy, Steve Harvey, whose nationally syndicated The Steve Harvey Morning Show airs in New York on WBLS, KISS FM's longtime rival. There were plans to take Hughley's show into syndication as well, but a dispute regarding his salary erupted between KISS FM's parent company and the potential syndication company. In August 2010, KISS FM dropped the show from its schedule and DL moved on to other endeavors. Quick sidestep, so this was just Hollywood trying to turn 2 black men against each other, as they do. DL Hughley had just got a show, and his show was coming out on WEPN, which is basically KISS FM. They're underneath the same umbrella. Steve Harvey had already had a syndicated morning show, which was on WBLS, which is KISS FM's longtime rival. That is not a coincidence. And it's also not a coincidence that they gave DL the same time slot as Steve Harvey. That's why I say it's not fair. It's kind of like you getting a daytime reality show or daytime talk show, and are given the same time slot as like a Wendy Williams or an Oprah Winfrey. Nobody's gonna watch you just because they already have other people in that same time slot that people are used to watching. It's literally part of some people's routine to watch certain things in the morning or certain things the night before they go to sleep. So to give DL that same time slot, why would that not create animosity? Of course, Steve Harvey doesn't care because he already has a nationally syndicated show, so he's not going anywhere no matter what. But DL Hughley, on the other hand, if the ratings aren't there, is that truly fair if he wasn't giving a fair shot? You're giving me the same time slot as somebody that is already extremely popular and is also black. So there's really nothing that made Steve and DL stand out besides the fact that these are both black men. So that's why I said it's easy for a person to gain some type of envy or jealousy over not being given a fair shot, especially. So I just feel like that was just them getting them together and wanting them to compete in an unhealthy battle instead of making it fair. They more so pushed it so that Steve's show wasn't going anywhere, because DL Hughley and Steve Harvey, there's really no comparison. People prefer to listen to Steve over DL, especially if he wasn't given a fair shot. So moving right along. Hughley and his wife LaDonna have 2 daughters, Ryan and Tyler, and a son, Kyle. Hughley has discussed his son's Asperger's syndrome on several occasions. On November 9th, 2017, Hughley gave an interview on Angela Yee's podcast, Lip Service, and in which he described having an affair early in his marriage and career. His mistress had become pregnant and had a son. The infant was shaken unalive by the infant's mother's boyfriend. Comedian and radio show host DL Hughley admitted in an interview that his wife has been paying a lot of money to the woman he cheated with that produced an out-of-wedlock child. Yes, you heard right. The wife is paying the mistress. In recent years, Hughley, 55, the original Kings of Comedy alum, has come clean and been very candid about his infidelity during his 30-year marriage to wife LaDonna Hughley. His transgressions wound up having multiple unintended consequences, one of them which turned out to be tragic. Last year, Hughley opened up about an affair that resulted in a birth of a baby boy. Hughley, who said he was overwhelmed, said he prayed asking God to take this off me. Then the prayer was answered in the worst possible way, the comedian told Vlad TV. When the toddler was a mere 9 months old, he was KILLED'd by the mistress's boyfriend. Hughley's wife had no idea about the affair or the baby for years. He mentioned during the interview how his wife came to find out. DL's quote, "Years later, the girl, it jammed her up too like it did me. She started asking for money, she needed some money, and I told her my wife would have to take care of it because I couldn't." He revealed that his wife handled their finances and took care of the financial arrangement between him and the mistress. His quote, "So she and my wife started talking, and my wife started giving her money. The condition was that she could never ask me and my wife to take care of her, so my wife took it from my allowance that I never gotten back." LaDonna Hughley, who some would consider to be the ultimate ride or die chick, may still be dishing out money to her husband's former mistress for all he knows, but he doesn't dare ask. His quote, "I don't know if she's still giving it to her or not," he said, "but I know that I don't get money anymore, and I can't go. Are you still? I can't do that." Hughley struggled to share this story with his wife and the world. His quote, "I knew that one day I would have to be man enough to tell my woman what happened," he explained. "Finally, one day I tell my wife, you know what? She said to me, I wish you would have told me and we could have went through this together." The comedian, actor, and outspoken radio personality shared that early in his career, he cheated on his wife and had an affair. Hughley says that the affair resulted in impregnating the woman that he was having an affair with. The situation became tragic when his son from that relationship was KILLED'd by the mistress's boyfriend, he explains. DL's quote, "So I had knocked this chick up and she had the baby and the baby got KILLED'd by her boyfriend. So it was horrible, horrible experience. I had this baby I'm paying for. I'm a boy. I'm scared. I'm married. He continues. I just started out my career and I get a call from my boy and he said, your son is in the hospital. And I go to the hospital and this boy was lying in the bed and apparently her boyfriend had shaken him and damaged his brain. Hughley says he finally told his wife about the situation and she was stunned, and he was also stunned by her reaction. So let's break this down. D.L. Hughley, early in his career, he had a mistress. He was having an affair with a woman and that woman became pregnant and she had a little boy. In the process of that, D.L.'s wife made an arrangement to pay her, not knowing that D.L. had had a baby with her and the baby had passed away. So she was unaware. So while the wife was still giving payments to this mistress, she had no idea that the baby had passed away until D.L. finally, years later, told her what happened to the baby. The boyfriend of the mistress was clearly abusive. And on top of that, he takes the baby and he shakes the baby, and the baby makes it to the hospital, still responsive, and the baby ended up passing away. Before the baby passed, D.L. prayed to God to remove this child from his life. He wanted nothing to do with this kid. He also calls the little boy the boy. He doesn't even respect him enough to call him by his name. D.L. never cared about that child. It's sickening to me that D.L. tries to walk around like he's this family man and does a show called The Hughleys and makes it seem as if he's such a stand-up guy when you had a whole child that you wanted nothing to do with. You pass the responsibility to your wife because you're a coward. You are very so much a coward. A real man would have never done that. A real man would have took care of that situation himself. You were not a boy, you were an adult, a married adult. What is to fear when it comes to you being afraid if you're bold enough to have an affair? And it's not like you only had one. You had multiple affairs. So to me, D.L. Hughley is a very evil person. There's no way as a father myself that even having a child out of wedlock with another woman, I'm still taking care of that child. That child is an innocent. That boyfriend would not have been able to do what he did to D.L.'s son if he was in his life. If they would have took the child or try to got custody of the baby and take care of him, it could have been a whole nother situation. But for DL to leave that child in harm's way because he feels that his career is more important than a life is very disgusting. And let's not forget, he literally prayed for that child to be taken away in some way, shape, or form. Be careful what you wish for, be careful what you pray for, because you just might get it. There seems to be no remorse from DL. DL seems relieved that that baby passed away. Him saying that it was a horrible experience. How if you're not going through it? You literally went and laid eyes on a child that was passing away and you left as if you had no responsibility to that child. You are an awful person. And that is why, especially, remember, this happened at the beginning of his career. This is why things, I feel, don't work out for D.L. Hughley. Just like God blesses, Lucifer blesses too. And there is no way in the world God would have taken that child away from you so that you could live your dream. But Lucifer definitely would have. That's why people call things sacrifices, and people giving up things, giving up something that you can't replace for something materialistic and replaceable. You can never replace that child. That's why a lot of negative things have come to DL. That's why a lot of business situations and a lot of business dealings have not worked out with him. I was a fan of D.L. Hughley until I heard these things. There is no way I could support someone like him. Remember, he let his wife handle this situation as if she was having the affair. She is not a ride or die. To me, she's stupid. To me, she's pathetic. To me, she's weak. To sit there and let that man make those type of decisions, not only did he betray you, he had a child, an innocent, and he did nothing to protect said child. Instead, he did away with them. Instead, he let you handle the situation, and that's why you were blindsided by it, because that is weakness. I don't care that she handles the finances. I don't care that his allowance got taken away and he still doesn't get it to this day. How weak of a man are you to let a woman control you or anybody control you like that in that regard anyway? You won't stand there and respect Monique and certain decisions that she feels that you are making. But at the same time, you want to try to make it seem as if you are a man and stand for something or fall for anything? How? You're a coward. You wouldn't even tell your wife, although she already knew about the mistress, that you had a son and that not only did you have one, he passed away. And not only did he pass away, you weren't at the funeral or none of that. You could have cared less in your eyes. He was relieved, and it takes a very evil person to be okay with a child, especially their own child, not being here anymore. We will now segue into what Monique has to say about being on D.L. Hughley's show and also this alleged headliner position. Who does it belong to? No one knew that there was an issue between Monique and D.L. Hughley until during the show, as comedians do, they add real life into their routine. And she adds what actually happened behind the scenes, allegedly, with her being removed as the headliner because usually the headliner closes the show. You'll have all of the other acts. You'll have a host that comes out and hosts the show and brings the acts out. But the last act is who everybody is coming to see, which makes them the headliner. No different than a concert. You'll see a lot of opening acts, and then the main event will happen towards the end of the concert. So this was supposed to be Monique. There was contracts given to her and signed. And when she signed those contracts, she was the last person performing. She was closing out the shows. But that changed. And it changed when she got there to perform, and she was told that she was actually not going to be closing out the show. D.L. Hughley was. And she was told that D.L. Hughley said he would not perform if he was not closing out the show as the headliner, although the contracts were already signed that stated that that would be Monique's position. Now, I agree with Monique with being upset. She has every right. If she was listed as the headliner, if she was listed as the person that was supposed to be closing out the show with a signed contract stating that that was going to be happening, it definitely should have. What I don't agree with Monique is her taking that out on D.L. Hughley. She was very upset. She basically called how DL was gay. DL stands for down low instead of DL Hughley or Daryl Lynn, whichever one you prefer. She also stated how he was the opener for the Kings of Comedy, how she closed the Queens of Comedy when she did her tour with the other ladies. But Monique, the sense of entitlement to me is just too much, because you were on the Queens of Comedy tour. That was a collective, no different than the Kings of Comedy. You were part of an alum. You were not the Monique and the Queens of Comedy. Like, you were not the headliner of that tour. So for you to kind of compare you and DL's roles with those tours, it really didn't make any sense to me. I'm just like, okay, well, he may have hosted the show, but he was still elected as one of the Kings of Comedy. And it's no different than with Monique. She was elected one of the Queens of Comedy. So I didn't get that reference, and I also didn't understand why she was on the stage calling him gay, knowing that he is not gay, using gay as an insult instead of just, you know, stating it as part of someone's sexuality. I didn't understand that either, knowing that he's married with children. I also don't get why she keeps bringing things in the background to the forefront. She even says in this act that she is a snitch, and that's not always looked at as a good thing. Now, once again, Monique did have every reason to be upset, but there was no reason to handle it how she handled it. She handled it like a child. To me, Monique needs to grow up, and I don't think she needs to humble herself, but I do think she needs to come back to earth. For some reason, Monique is up in the skies. She is a legend. I will definitely give her that. But on top of it, legends work. One of the main reasons Steve Harvey is still as relevant as he is today is because he works hard. He is constantly on the scene. He's constantly booking gigs. People know him by face, voice, name immediately. And Monique has kind of fallen off. She hasn't done tours in a very long time. She hasn't done movies in a while. I know she just got a role with 50 Cent. He just hired her. But even still, there's a long little stint, in between time of her basically canceling herself. Monique has brought a lot of this energy on herself. And I agree with Lunel, who states that Monique is an egomaniac. I do think she is that way. She feels entitled to things that she hasn't earned. If you want the same act right or the same support, I feel that you should do what these other people are doing to gain that act right and to gain that support. If Monique's pay was being cut in half, or something like that, I would understand as well as, her being so upset. But if you're still getting paid the same amount, it's like, shut your mouth, go on stage, do your job, and go home. None of that was needed. None of it was necessary. Now there's animosity. It's like, will this tour even continue, especially with the amount of disrespect that's happening and also the receipts that Monique keeps putting up on social media? It's like, are you proving this point to DL or are you proving this point to you? Because it doesn't make sense. At this point in time, it seems as if she's arguing more so with herself than with DL. We're going to get into the receipts, but before we do, like I said before, it's not like Monique is relevant. She has been, and she is a legend. I'm not taking those things from her. But Monique, in her sense of entitlement, is she feels because she is a legend, she should be given certain opportunities, and she has been. But to a certain degree, she is responsible for not being in the limelight, the spotlight, whatever you want to call it. No different than with Netflix. She felt like Dave Chappelle and others, the amount of money that they were making, she should have been in that bracket. Well, how so? Dave Chappelle has been extremely anticipated, especially before those stand-up acts came out. Dave Chappelle just kind of disappeared in his prime. So with him doing that, he was not rubbing a bunch of people the wrong way and going around making enemies of Hollywood elite, like Oprah, Lee Daniels, a lot of people like that, Tyler Perry. He was not going around doing that, like burning bridges. Monique most definitely was. And again, Dave Chappelle is extremely anticipated, no different than people like Chris Rock. They may not be your cup of tea, but there are millions and millions of other people's cup of tea. So if you have people that are willing to invest a certain amount of money into Dave Chappelle because they know how funny he is and how well he do and how anticipated he is, why would Monique get the same amount if she doesn't have any of the same energy? If she's not anticipated, if there's not a bunch of people that are saying, we need a Monique special, we need a Monique special, we need a Monique special, that's not what's going around. It's more so, we need a Dave Chappelle special, we need a Chris Rock special, we need a Cat Williams special. That's what's being requested. No one is requesting Monique, but it doesn't mean that people don't want to work with her. So for her to feel like she gets to walk in the door when Dave Chappelle walked away from $50 to $100 million working for Comedy Central and not renewing and doing the Chappelle show, why does she think that she should even make anything near what Dave Chappelle would be making when she's never made the type of money that Dave Chappelle has made? It's the sense of entitlement. She feels entitled, and she shouldn't feel that way without the work. Yes, you have done work, but what have you done for me lately type of situation. So let's get into this online feud and battle between Monique and D.L. Hughley. The war between comedians Monique and D.L. Hughley is growing in intensity and nastiness as they both post alleged contract agreements on Instagram. Monique initiated the public conflict when she blasted him during a comedy concert in Detroit Saturday, May 29, 2022. That includes some vulgar jokes about Hughley's wife. She raged that Hughley and his people had arranged a contractual agreement whereby she was named the headliner of the show and therefore would appear last. When the order of the comedians was allegedly changed, Monique went volcanic on Hughley and accused him of violating the contract. Hughley clapped back the next day, accusing Monique of being confused from the start and getting the contract situation mixed up. The Kings of Comedy alum also showed his $2.4 million that he alleged contract agreement. He also said Monique has a long and bad habit of getting into major beefs with others, including Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, Lee Daniels, and even Netflix. D.L. Hughley's post to Instagram. After this, I don't want to hear no mo about this. Here it is in black and white. The only thing blacked out is personal and bank information. Pay attention to headliner, highest paid artist on the show, artists who have approval of lineup of the show, D.L. Hughley, closing. Receipts, opinions, I've got everything that was stated in my contract. Everything but let's say I didn't, my beef wouldn't be with anyone but the promoter and or my team, and I damn sure wouldn't make it personal. If you have a problem, take it up with management, and by that, I mean yours. Monique, 54, is now firing back with receipts to prove to her 1.2 million IG followers that she was named the headliner. There were some of you who were fooled by the smoke and mirrors of DL posting this deal memo versus his performance agreement. Monique penned on Monday evening, May 30th, 2022. Here is my performance agreement, and here are the emails, texts confirming that, as per usual, I'm going to always keep it real and honest with my people. The Oscar-winning actress also said the contract that she showed is signed, while the contract that Hughley posted was not. What type of ironclad agreement doesn't have signatures or participants involved? Apparently DL's, LOL. Later in the long message to her fans, Monique said that the questionable contracts are how comedians often get exploited. To those out there who thought a deal memo was the same as a performance agreement, especially some of the comedians, this is how we constantly are taken advantage of by the business, Monique said. Monique demanded that Hughley produce the contract with his signatures on it. He has yet to respond. Let's break this down as far as we can with as much as we know. So D.L. Hughley shows his deal memo, which Monique says is different from a performance agreement, which I agree with her. D.L. Hughley posts proof that he was the headliner, he was the highest paid on the show, he has artist approval of the lineup, and he also has approval for the lineup in general. Monique posts a receipt showing that she was the last to perform, but that was not written in stone. Just because she signed it does not mean that that was how things were gonna go. Why? Is because D.L. Hughley runs the lineup. So if he wants to switch the lineup at any moment in time, he has that right as the person that is in control of it. So if Monique is saying, well, I was the headliner, I was supposed to perform last, and he changed it. Monique, he had the right to do so, okay? He did not take any money out of your mouth. You were not getting $2.4 million for this tour. D.L. Hughley was the highest paid. You were not Monique, okay? The contract that was drawn up, the performance agreement, that was her writing that up, okay? It was sent to her if she can agree or disagree. So if she disagreed, then that means that she changed it, right? She sends it for approval. Nobody told her that it was denied because she didn't send it to DL. She sent it to the promoter, is from what I am gathering. The promoter took it to DL. DL said, no, I want to be the last to perform, blah, blah, blah. And I believe that that made Monique upset. Once again, Monique, DL is the headliner. You are not. There is not one piece of paper that I have read that states that Monique is the headliner, that Monique has the approval for the artist lineup, for the lineup of the show, and is also the highest paid. The headliner always makes the most money. Monique, once again, was not that. Whatever DL did, he handled behind the scenes, which Monique should have did the same thing instead of acting like a child, getting on that stage and making it personal. It's not personal. It pays to be the boss. And in this situation, Monique was not the boss. There we go again with the sense of entitlement. In Monique's performance agreement, that is her terms. So by it saying talent will be the headliner of the show. That's her saying, I'm the talent and I'm going to be the headliner of the show. You do not have the right to choose that. So she feels that since they accepted her agreement to state that talent would do one 30-minute to 45-minute show and whatnot, she felt that she was definitely going to headline. If DL did not want you to headline, you weren't, because in his deal memo, he was made the headliner. Okay, so that means the people that are hiring, the promoters, the people that are putting this tour, this show together, they're stating that they want DL to be the headliner. Monique's performance agreement, which is something that is written by her and her team, she is stating that she will headline. You can't come and tell them what you are going to do. All they care about is that you agreed to do a 30 to 45-minute show. You agreed to do that. That's all they care about. Meaning that you being a headliner is optional. If there is an open possibility of a headliner that is needed, then Monique is agreeing to be that. There's nowhere in this contract that states that she is the headliner, that she will be the highest paid. It's her contract. Where is her contract or deal memo that is stating that she is the headliner, that she's going to be the highest paid, and that she has the right to artist approval of the lineup and also has the approval of the lineup of the show in its entirety? She does not have anything stating that besides her own memo, artist agreement, that she's written up for herself, meaning that's the agreement that she gives to anybody that is asking her to perform. It does not mean that all needs will be met. It does not mean that. Performance agreements are usually done by the artist. So these would be things that Monique would have been requesting, okay? Usually a manager or whoever your team is, they will write it up for you. And sometimes the person whether it's the venue or the promoter, they may have their own, okay? So it still would make sense, because Monique's saying that his memo is different from the performance agreement. And like I said earlier, I agree with her, because it's more so of what the artist is agreeing to performance-wise. So Monique said that she wanted to be the headliner in her performance agreement. She also said that she was willing to do a 30 to 45-minute set in her performance agreement. So just because she turns that in and they accept it does not mean that they're accepting her as the headliner. And Monique felt like, okay, well, since I put I'm going to headline, you're going to have me headline. That was not the situation, okay? The problem came in is that Monique felt that since they accepted it, because they don't have to accept everything. All they accepted was that she will perform for 30 to 45 minutes. If you look, Monique's performance was 45 minutes. If you look at the performance agreement, she states that she will do a 30 to 45-minute set. Boom, right? Here's where the issue comes in. She felt that her performance agreement overthrows anybody else's contract, okay? When you are on a tour, you're not given the same contracts as everyone else. You are not. The performance times are different. So if you look at the other artists, there are artists that perform for a shorter time. With them performing for a shorter time, do you really think they're making the same amount of money as Monique or D.L. Hughley in this tour? Yeah, absolutely not. So that means that everybody has their own contract, okay? Monique and D.L. Hughley would not have the same contract, because if that performance agreement that Monique had was from the promoter or whoever is running the event, then wouldn't DL have had the same performance agreement, meaning that he's stating that he's the headliner, meaning he's stating that he would do a 30 to 45 minute performance, because Monique did the same thing. And if you pay attention, DL performed for 45 minutes as well. So I believe that in his memo, he was given that memo, and Monique was not given that memo because she was not the headliner. Meaning they could have the same performance agreement, but they're not going to have the same memo because he is the headliner. And I don't think Monique knew that until she got there and he changed the lineup, because he has control of it. So when she says, why am I going, at this time, I'm supposed to be going last, and somebody says, and they go check from her team, which will probably have been her husband, because I'm sure her husband made that performance agreement as well, because I believe Monique's husband is still her manager. Then that's when she found out. So they said, hey, DL changed it. So she goes on stage mad at DL, not realizing that he had the right to do so. You see what I'm saying? Also pay attention to how Monique is stating that she wants D.L. Hughley to show his signed contract, which I don't understand why, because clearly he signed a contract because he wouldn't have been on stage like he was if he did not. I mean, he performed, he clearly signed a contract, just like Monique. But Monique, she never shows her deal memo like he did. A memo is you being CC'd like an email, an itinerary of the things that you are garnished, information that you need, okay? Get the memo. Monique did not get the memo, no pun intended. She did not get one of these because she was never the headliner. D.L. Hughley was the headliner. That's why he got this memo, and that is why Monique did not. Monique can't show you that. She's shown emails, she's shown other things, but she has not shown her deal memo. Pay attention to that. D.L. Hughley responds to the allegation that Monique stated about his sexuality, his wife, the contracts, among other things. So let's take a sidestep and hear what D.L. had to say.
What did my dog have to do with your contract? What does my wife have to do with your contract? You wrote your contract, you and your daddy. You proceeded to say things that were so patently insulting that it was galling. It was galling. You asked in subsequent conversations why I have a dog, a support dog, what kind of person has a support dog. I have that dog because my father died. My children and family decided they would get a dog from where he was from, and I named the dog after my father. I don't have a dog to keep people away from me. I have a dog so I have my father with me all the time. That is an act of love which you know very little about. You proceeded to assault my sexuality. You have the temerity to assault someone's sexuality, a man's sexuality, given who you lay next to? None of that had anything to do with alleged contract dispute. You could have taken that up with a lawyer.
I completely agree with D.L. Hughley. Monique could have handled this behind the scenes instead of coming forward like a blabbermouth, like she always is. She's always the victim. It makes black women look bad. It just makes like black women, there's always something wrong. They're always being wronged. They're always the victim. There's always something bad happening. Woe is me when it comes to Monique Lee Daniels. Over just everybody always does something to her. She's never the problem. In this instant, she is the problem. DL was the headliner. Monique could do nothing about it. That's why contacting a lawyer or anything like that, that wouldn't have added up because you have nothing stating a deal memo or contract from this event that is stating you are the headliner. She is not. She's not the headliner. And then on top of that, she made it personal against D.L. Hughley because he changed the lineup. That's when she found out that he was the headliner because she didn't know. So if you didn't know you were the headliner because nobody told you you were, why would you think that you are the headliner besides your performance agreement stating that you would be the headliner? The only way that this event would have made her the headliner is if they did not have one. She would have been the most famous person on there besides D.L. Hughley. But again, pay attention. At the top of D.L. Hughley's deal memo, it states 100% headliner. And then on top of that, Kiss FM is throwing this event, okay? Why would they not choose DL when he already has a morning show with them? Why would they not choose him? He's a shoo-in for this position. That is why Monique was upset because there was nothing she could do. So she goes on stage and made it personal because that's all she could do. So once DL dropped the receipts to prove that he was the headliner over Monique, her and her husband, Sydney, decided to sit down and bring up more allegations against D.L. Hughley.
It was very eventful. And I had a show at the Fox Theater on Saturday night in Detroit. And y'all have seen a video gone viral with me speaking very openly and candidly about my feelings towards D.L. Hughley, the contract, and the past. And as I was on that stage saying what I was saying, let me be clear, it was intentional. It was intentional. The contract situation and the headliner situation, that was just the icing on the cake for D.L. Hughley and I.
Let's take them back, though.
Take them back.
Let's take them back to the beginning so everybody can get an understanding of where the love fest, if you will, ended.
Let me turn it up, Daddy. They saying turn it up.
All right.
Okay. So let me just take y'all back to where when you think you're cool with somebody, you find out that you're not. Some time ago when D.L. Hughley, he still has his radio show, and they called me to do an interview. I go on to do the interview, and I'm getting interviewed by the sister Jasmine, and I can't remember the other gentlemen that were in the room. It was one of his producers, and it was another gentleman on the radio. And please forgive me, I can't remember their names. So we're having a great time doing this interview. Well, when we get to the end of the interview, the sister Jasmine says, "Hey, Monique, would you like to play a game?" And I said, "Okay, sis, let's play the game." Well, when she said the game is called Would You Rather. So I said, okay, I'm down for it. And then the sister says to me, "Would you rather your husband sleeps with Lee Daniels with a condom or Corinne Steffens without one?"
Breathe that in for a sec.
Now, for those of you who didn't hear it and you might just have joined the room, I want to take you back to that moment. This sister, a black woman, asked me when they were playing this game called Would You Rather, "Hey, Monique, would you rather your husband sleeps with Lee Daniels with a condom or Corinne Steffens without one?" Now, the question that I would ask anybody that's listening, is that offensive? Is that insulting?
Monique, this is why you're in the wrong, because you said that this had everything to do with the contracts, which would have had nothing to do with D.L. Hughley. That would have been with the promoters, etc. So you sitting down with your husband stating that when you were on his show that there were some disrespectful questions asked to you. One, Monique, you had a choice whether you wanted to answer it or not. Two, you agreed to playing the game. Three, you are finding any reason to try to make yourself look good, to try to justify your bad actions. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Monique. You are way too old to be go around playing the pick me game. You're too old for it. And once again, you stated that this had to do with the contracts. If your whole issue was that DL when you went on to DL's show, that his co-host asked you questions that you felt was disrespectful, what does that have to do with DL? Especially if he is not there. The show is being ran by the people that look after the show while he is gone. It's no different than Steve Harvey. He has people that co-host that look after his show when he is not available. So what is the problem here besides the fact that you are upset that you were not paid the most and that you were not a headliner and that you did not get to perform last because it made you feel sunned? It made you feel like D.L. Hughley was better than you. So instead of going and handling this with the right people, the proper channels, you chose to take it out on DL, which makes you a bad person. You are taking something out on him out of guilt, envy, and jealousy. Monique, you are wrong. And once again, you're too old for this behavior. Thank you all for joining me. I love you all. Make sure you like and subscribe. This is all I have for you on this situation for now. If more brews, we will do a part 2. But until then, I love you all. Until the next video, bye.
Fresh, 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 fresh.